And we are preparing for our next speaker, who is an engineering manager in the data and analytics department at Datadog. He joined them back in 2015, feels like a while ago, when it was just a startup of 100 employees, and now it's over 5,000 people. He's passionate about taking beautiful pictures, by the way. You should stalk him a little bit online, excellent pictures, but also enabling people with data. And he's excited to share his knowledge with us today. So let's hear the talk about how they scaled self-serve analytics at Datadog for 5,000 people. Please welcome J.M. Saponaro.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me. That's a great introduction. All right, first question, raise your hand if you've ever built your own IKEA furniture. Pretty much everyone, right? Should have asked the other way around, like who hasn't built one? If you think about it, it's pretty cool because they give you three things. They give you the pieces, they give you the tools, and then they give you the instructions. And with all that, what you're able to do is that you do it yourself, right? They don't have to add extra work, they just count on you to build your furniture. You trust it because you made it yourself with your own hands. You know, you trust that it's going to be solid. You even know if you're missing a screw somewhere, but overall it's fine. And I don't know about you, but when I built my bed or my wardrobe, then for the next 7 days, anytime my family or friends are coming, I'm like, have you seen the bed? I spent like 3 hours the other night. So you're kind of proud of what you did. And all the value that you see in the IKEA furniture that you built, it actually has a name. It's called the IKEA effect. And researchers define that as a cognitive bias, which is a tendency to regard something that you've made with your own hands as more valuable than the exact same things that you could have found out there, already made by someone else or by a company. So you kind of see where I'm going with that. Is that kind of what we call self-serve? What if instead of the pieces, tools, instruction, like you replace pieces by data and then instructions with knowledge? Does that mean that now people can do it themselves? They can leverage the data on their own without your help. They trust it, super important when you use data. And finally, they show it to others, they democratize it. So what we're going to talk about today is like, what is self-serve analytics? How do we define it? And at Datadog, what are the suite of tools that we've developed and offers to the rest of the company to scale it to 5,000 employees? We'll talk also about the limitations of self-serve analytics and finally how to measure success. My name is JM. I'm engineering manager at Datadog. I support multiple teams within the data and analytics department there. If you don't know what Datadog is all your monitoring and security tools in one single pane of glass, one platform. You can see the health and performance of your infrastructure, applications, and the security of it. And the history of internal analytics at Datadog is kind of the same as my story. When I joined in 2015, it was like a company of about 100 employees. I was kind of the first person doing data and analytics there. When we started hiring more product managers, when the marketing department started growing, the need of data grew with it. And so it became very clear a few months after that we need to create an official data and analytics team. So by then, I kind of became data engineers. Like we built everything I've done in actual robust data pipelines with Spark. And we started hiring, and the team grew and grew. Started managing a team of like data analysts and then data engineers at the same time. And now we are about like 45 people, and I have the chance to support 4 different teams composed of data engineers, data analysts, analytics engineers, front-end engineers, and the managers of these teams. And today, Datadog is 5,000 employees, like I said, and we offer dozens of products, not just one. When I joined, it was only infrastructure monitoring. When I say the dozen of products, that's exactly what it looks like today. This is the entire suite of products that Datadog offers to our customers. So as you can imagine, behind that, you have project managers, marketing teams, sales teams, and all these teams need data, and the engineering teams working on this project, they generate data within the company. So it's a massive amount of data sets produced all across the company in various systems. So what's the role of self-serve analytics in all that at Datadog? The mission of my teams is officially to empower everyone at Datadog to make data-informed decisions on their own. And on their own, obviously, is very important here. What it means is that users, so other employees, can use and leverage data without any help, and more particularly, without your data team's help. Why do you want that? Well, at our scale, you want three things. You want to have more times, like your data team can spend more time on high-value, longer-term initiatives rather than spending their whole day answering every single data questions and small requests. If you want to scale, that's important as well. If you have self-serve analytics, then you can grow your data team, but not as fast necessarily as your company. And finally, everyone wants to build a data-driven company. That's the culture you want to build within your firm. And with self-serve analytics, you want to count on other employees to spread the knowledge about data, how to use the tools, how to use the data. That's great, that's a good word, but what does it look like concretely? Actually, it's not the right question to ask. What self-serve analytics looks like, you should ask first, for whom? Because different people within your company will have different needs in terms of self-serve analytics. At Datadog, we kind of break down our internal users in three categories. You have the analytics explorers. They just want to quickly find a dashboard, some data, and answer a question in a few seconds. Then you have people who knows a bit more how to manipulate data. They can build their own reports. They can build their own queries. And finally, we have the experts. The experts, they want to interact with the whole lifecycle of the data. And these different people, they're going to end up interacting and needing different self-serve analytics tools. The first one, they're fine with just data discovery and pre-built reports, while the analytics builders, they need to be able to build their own reports to transform the data. And finally, the experts, they want to measure data quality. They want to be involved in importing the data and exposing it. But before we talk about the tools, if we go back to these three pillars, data, tools, and knowledge, the first tool and the first product here is data. Everything starts with data. And as you've seen, there are countless of articles online talking about data as a product, because it is a product. That's where everything starts with. That's a term that we've seen in other talks today. You want to build a single source of truth within your company in terms of data for other employees. My teams, we deal with all sorts of data about Datadog's business, operations, and the product. We ingest data from tens, dozens of different data sources, whether it's business systems, internal data stores, and we even let other teams import their own data with a tool called Bring Your Own Data. It's like bring your own bottle, but here you bring your own data. And that feeds the source of truth. Of course, it's a bit more complex under the hood. Like this is overall the platform, what it looks like today, the different infrastructure, the components that we have. We used to do everything with extract, transform, load with Spark. But over the past few years, the new technologies and the more powerful compute powers on data warehouses allowed us to switch many data pipelines to extract, load, and transform. We extracted with tools like Airbyte or a direct connection between the source and the warehouse. And then we transformed it with dbt, which became a standard. In single source of truth, you have the word single. That means that you want to build a central source that feeds all the other department data use cases. So our consumers internally are all the departments, from engineering to marketing to customer success to recruiting and even HR. That also feeds all the applications that these people are going to use, whether it's a BI tool, it's a notebook, a data discovery tool, programmatic access if you want to send the data to other systems, or just leverage it for machine learning models. And in single source of truth, you also have the word truth. Very important. How do we ensure that at Datadog? Is three main pillars. Conventions. So I had the chance to see the data, the single source of truth being built from zero. And from the very beginning, we were very cautious and very diligent in enforcing strong conventions. That means in the naming, but also in the data cleanliness and all the metadata, like making sure that every data has good descriptions. But again, the naming of fields and tables is very important. And internal users, from the moment they see the name of a table or a field, they should know pretty much immediately what is the structure, what it contains. Data documentation, very hard to tackle, but very important to tackle from the beginning, otherwise it's a nightmare to catch up. Making sure that every data set, everything you have to know about a data set that's not obvious from the beginning when you see it should be documented. And finally, data quality. We're going to talk about it a bit more after. So we know how to build a single source of truth for data. But then how do people interact with this data? How do they leverage it? Well, I'm going to cut the suspense. This is the entire suite of tools that you have to offer if you want people to completely self-serve data and analytics within your company. And it represents basically the entire data lifecycle, from the moment the data is ingested, data intake, the transformation, when people clean the data, transform it, add some business logic, aggregation that is needed to make the data easy to use and intuitive for business users. Data quality, making sure people trust the data. Data discovery, making sure it's easy to find the data that's going to answer their question in the moment. And finally, how to leverage the data, extract the insight from it with data analysis and data reporting. Let's dive a bit in each of these. So first, data intake. What my teams offer to the rest of the company is an easy way to import data from their systems in this single source of truth. What we do is that we abstract away all the heavy lifting, all the complexity of the data integrations with the sources, the scheduling of the pipelines. What we provide people is just connectors, and we even tell them you have data somewhere, you can import it yourself on your own, we bring your own data. They can interact with this data intake through an intuitive, dedicated UI. And finally, we're Datadog, so observability is very important. We make sure that people know exactly what's running. If something breaks or if the data being produced has a quality issue, they need to be alerted in the right channels. So if you go back to the diagram I presented about our infrastructure right before, this is the self-serve intake platform. You can even extend it to dbt if you want. That's what we mean by self-serve data intake. And when I talk about access to an intuitive UI, we built an internal app that lets people select the intake source, where is the data originate from, and they can specify how the data should be imported in the single source of truth, which is your data warehouse. How often it should be imported? Should we refresh the entire data set every time, or just extract what changed? How often the data is going to be used? And then once this is filled out, that creates pull requests, Jira task, and everything is automated to make sure that the data is imported and they don't have to worry about how it's imported. That's not their problem, that's our problem. One particular example, when I said that we provide just connectors and we take care of the integration and scheduling, if people have data in Google Sheets, which is all over the place in any companies, like CSVs, Excel file, or Google Sheets, people at Datadog can just tell us, this is my Google Sheet links, this is the name of the Google Sheet and the sheet, and we just take care of importing it. Now your data arrive in your data warehouse, but it's not clean, it's not ready to be used. People with data knowledge needs to be able to add some business logic and clean it. We use dbt, standard in our industry right now, it's open source. It lets people define their SQL views, have a dev environment that's completely integrated with our ecosystems, with our scheduling integrations, our data warehouse. And we want to open dbt to other departments, to data specialists who know how to write SQL, who know how to add this business logic, but we don't want the whole thing to become a mess, because we went from a small team that was maintaining everything to suddenly we open it to everyone, so it can quickly blow up and go all over the place. So we open the access to dbt, but with strong conventions about how SQL should be written, how columns and tables should be named, making sure that there is no duplicate data, like the same insight can be found in multiple tables, and suddenly people don't know which one to use. And finally, as always, observability. People create their views in dbt, their data models, but they need to know exactly what is the data lineage, if the pipelines, the models have run properly, if there is any quality issues, and if there is one, they are alerted. That's what it looks like in terms of observability within Datadog. So we use our own product, of course. Like today, there was a talk from GitLab talking about dog fooding. When your Datadog is even more important to dog food. All right, your data has been imported, has been transformed, is ready to be used, but how do people know where it is and which table to leverage? That's where data discovery is very important. Data discovery allows people to browse all the data that we offer. Not only the data, but all the data assets. It can be a table, it can be a dbt model, it can be a BI tool dashboard, it can be a notebook as well, it can be a machine learning model. So we want to let users easily browse all these data assets and filter through them if they don't know exactly what to search for. If they know exactly which keyword they want to search for, then they have a powerful search. And it searches not only the names of these data assets, but also the metadata, like the descriptions that we try to crowdsource to other departments, because often they know better than us what a field means. And finally, once they found the data assets, they need to understand it and to trust it before using it. And that's all the challenge around metadata, making sure that people know where the data is coming from, who owns every single step of the data lifecycle, who owns the data source, who owns the intake, who owns the data transformation, who owns the usage of this data. Our users need to know also like how often is refreshed, and as always, data quality, which is tightly integrated with data discovery. We actually built the first version of data discovery within our BI tool itself, which is open source. We're going to talk about it right after. And today, we are making it even more powerful with an internal app, because people interact with the data within the BI tool, but not only. That's one of the primary ways, yes, but there are also other ways to interact with our data sets. Self-serve reporting. We just talked about BI tool. We make the bet to deploy a BI tool that does very well 90% of use cases, which are often pretty basic in terms of data exploration, writing SQL, and building a dashboard. So we decided to go with Metabase, which is easy to use for any user, technical or less technical. Again, our goal is to serve the entire company, from technical departments like engineering, to product managers, to HR, and recruiting. Using an open source tool like Metabase allows us also to customize it. We have a full-time front-end engineer who is able to customize the UI and tailor it to Datadog's internal users' needs. And finally, automation. Thanks to its powerful API, we can automate a lot of processes that used to take a lot of time from my teams to manage. For example, anytime there is a new user who needs access to the BI tool and to the data, we don't want to manually find who is that person, which team, and which data they should have access to. This is completely automated. We find all the attributes of this employee, which team, which department, which level, which role, and we automatically map them to the right data permissions. Content management. We have 5,000 employees. You can imagine how many content is created within the BI tool. You want to be able to automatically archive the dashboards that haven't been used for, let's say, 4 or 5 months. So now we talked about the entire suite of tools, and this is common for any company. This is what you should build within your own as well, at any scale you are, especially if your company is growing. And you will have to make the choice between using a SaaS provider, using open source, building on top of open source, or completely building your own in-house tool. Datadog, we are the size, and also we have the engineering resource to be in between building our own stuff and using open source. So for data intake and transformation, we use Airbyte, Spark, dbt. All of them are open source. Data quality, we are building our own data quality platform, built actually on top of DQ, which is open source. Data discovery, homemade. And analysis and data reports, open source with Metabase and Notebook on Jupyter. So we talked about the data, the tools, but if people don't know how to use your data and your tools, then they're not going to do it. So they need to have the knowledge to do it. There is this famous quote, like give a fish and you feed them for a day. Teach them how to fish and you feed them for a lifetime. So you can replace that by data. Give them data and you help them just for one day. Or you teach them how to use data and you make them data-driven for a lifetime. That starts with education. We have deployed a program within Datadog called Analytics Academy. And the curriculum of Analytics Academy, which is a series of classes that any employee can take and is regularly given, the curriculum of these classes is broken down by the different personas that we talked about in the beginning. So you have the level 1, which is Analytics Explorer, the level 2, Analytics Builders, where not only people in the level 1 are going to learn how to discover the right report and the right data sets. In the level 2, with builders are going to learn how to use it and create their own reports for themselves and for their teams. And finally, the experts, advanced SQL, advanced features, how to use dbt, and all that. Education is good, but sometimes you need to provide support. You cannot get out of providing support at one point. So there are multiple ways of doing that. It's live support, so using Slack or your communication tool internally, making sure that you have an easy-to-find and a single channel for people to ask their questions. Internal knowledge base, you can use stuff like internal Stack Overflow, or simply documentation like Confluence or Google Docs. And finally, it's 2023. We cannot really do a talk without mentioning AI, but we are working also on leveraging AI. So Datadog released a few weeks ago a chatbot called Beats AI, which allows people on Datadog to talk to a bot and understand what's going on in their own infrastructure. Like what are the current incidents, being able to summarize what's going on, to find what are the systems impacted by an incident. So we want to reuse the same technology and build on top of it for internal data. Right now, we don't really trust AI to generate SQL queries, and we think that it's even worse to generate wrong SQL and wrong insight than not having anything at all. So we want actually the bot to redirect people to existing resources for now. Which table might answer that question, which reports might answer that question. And knowledge has to be extended by actual humans, actual experts on the field. Let's talk about the organization of my teams during the history of internal analytics at Datadog. So I joined in 2015, and with 100 employees, it was fine to have a centralized team of just a couple of data analysts doing the data transformation and the reporting for everyone. But then we grew 500, 1,000. Even if your team gets bigger, at one point it gets harder and harder to have the domain knowledge to support every single department, whether it's finance, recruiting data, product data, especially when the suite of products developed by your company is growing as well. And after a couple of thousand employees, it became very clear that we need to adopt kind of a hybrid, semi-decentralized model. I'm going to talk about it after. What I mean by semi-decentralized is that we still have a centralized data team, but that's not going to answer every single request. We're going to provide the tooling for data analysts that we hire on the field to answer that for their departments. And so we launched communities of experts within Datadog. We started by one that's easy and that you can launch at any company at any stage, which is analytics ambassadors. Analytics ambassadors are just volunteers. They're not full-time data analysts. They are volunteers within each department or each team who are willing to help themselves and their colleagues, their coworkers, to leverage data to be more efficient and have better impact within the company. That's easy because you can just find people who are just willing to learn a bit more, who are interested in data. It's good for their own career. It's good for their team. Everyone is happy. But at one point, we needed actual experts, actual full-time data analysts. So that was a hard one to launch, but we managed to do it. We started a couple of years ago, and the goal was to convince upper management within each department to hire their own full-time data analysts. These people report to their own department. They are aligned with the priorities of their departments. They are part of every single meeting where data might be important and might be leveraged. So that's harder because you need to advocate for it. You need to make sure the experience of these people that you're going to hire is good. So we are participating into the hiring process, making sure the recruiting pipelines are smooth, making sure that the onboarding is good, that they have a mentor, usually someone from our centralized team. And then making sure that we mitigate for the lack of sense of belonging. When you hire someone with a specific role in a department, whether it's a front-end engineer or a data analyst, they can feel a bit lonely sometimes. So we need to make sure that there are many occasions for them to interact with other analytics engineers and data analysts within the company. So we do regular meetups, we do a summit once a year where they can all meet each other, we have the regular talks with them. So all that takes time, but it's worth it. If you want to scale self-serve analytics, you have to do it. All right, to recap the magic recipe of knowledge, it's education, support, and having experts. And then the goal is actually to try to push the education and support part to the experts as you start building mini data analyst teams within other departments. Now you know how to build self-serve analytics within a company, but we have to admit that it has its limits. There are some advanced use cases, we call that advanced analytics, that cannot really be completely self-served by other departments. Two quick examples. First one is what we call automated insights or machine learning. We have a team dedicated to be on the field with other departments. So they're part of our data and analytics department, but they go partner with different departments to understand their advanced analytics needs. For example, they partner with marketing to do customer segmentation, to do a better, smarter targeting for ads and emails. We partner also with the product management department to understand like customer lifecycle, onboarding efficiency, growth strategy as well. We develop a tool that sends automatic alerts to the right customer success managers or product managers when there is an opportunity of upsell or when we detect automatically that the customer is likely to churn. And finally, other machine learning models, for example, for support to group efficiently Zendesk tickets. Another one, we do research. If you go on the Datadog blog, you will find some posts about the big trends in our industry about containers or serverless. Datadog has a vast amount of data that we can use to detect some unique trends, and we are uniquely positioned to do that. Same thing, that's something that cannot really be self-served. So you need to have experts from your department who perfectly understand the tooling and how to leverage them, and partner with community departments or product management departments to publish these researches. Finally, we are talking about data. If you don't try to measure your success, you're not really a good data team, right? And that's hard. Honestly, even for that, we can do better ourselves. So how do you measure that self-serve analytics actually work within your company? When we created our sub-org, which is called, again, self-serve analytics, we said, what are we optimizing for? Every time we create a team or that we create an org, we are trying to think about what are we optimizing for. And we said we optimize for time to insight. So maybe we should measure that. Okay, what does that mean? Honestly, time to insight, I have no idea how to measure that. So the approach we are taking is that for each tool, we're trying to define a set of metrics that's relevant for the specific tools. And that's much easier to do. Because if you think about data intake, then it's easier to measure the time it takes from the moment someone says, OK, I want data from this source, from the moment they finally have access to it. It's easier for data transformation to measure if your data experts, like data analysts, are actually engaged with a tool like dbt. How many views, how many models are they creating? How efficient is their development process? Data quality, also a bit easier. If your data quality measurement means that you collect data quality metrics, then you can put SLOs on them, and you can measure if you're actually meeting them or not. Data discovery, how much time, how much clicks does it take for users to find the right data sets that they need. And finally, for reporting, data analysis, you can just track user engagement. How many people are creating reports, how many people are just viewing reports, how many notebooks are created each day. That's much easier to measure. But most importantly, you have to measure them by user category, because some of these metrics make sense for the Analytics Explorer, some of them makes more sense for the Analytics Builder. So you need to measure all that by user category, and not only in the different personas, but also the role they have within the company. Obviously, analytics ambassadors or data analysts are going to have a different engagement than other people with each of these different tools. And if you remember, like at the beginning, we said that that's what we wanted to get out of self-serve analytics, the fact that people can do it themselves, they trust the data, they democratize it. So does that mean that we can try to track if we get fewer requests? If people trust it, does that mean that we get fewer questions? If they democratize it, does that mean that we see more usage? So I just want to add a disclaimer that we should be very careful with these sort of metrics, because the fact that you have fewer requests or fewer questions doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. Maybe it's just that people stopped using your tools or your data because they don't understand it, and so actually it's a bad sign. So maybe it's interesting to look at the combination of all of them. If you have an increased usage but fewer requests, or like a constant number of requests or questions, then maybe it's good. But each of them individually, be careful with these ones. And finally, there are things that you cannot measure, and they are super important. It's all the signals that you get out of conversations, questions, meetings, requests, the feedbacks that you get from users, the survey that you send to your internal users. Read them, read the word that actual human beings are writing, because that's where you get the best ideas, and that's where you spot the biggest pain points for them. And it's usually very, very interesting to talk to two different types of people. The people who love using your tools and data because they're very excited and they have plenty of good ideas and they are really willing to help you. But also the people who hate using your tools. You cannot satisfy everyone. There will always be people who don't really like these tools, who would have done it differently. It's important to talk to these people as well, because that's also where you get very interesting ideas. So talk to what we call champions and detractors. All right. I said that today you will learn these different things. What is self-serve analytics, the tools that we use to scale to 5,000 employees, the limitations and measuring success. So if I had to recap everything, first, when you define self-serve analytics, first define who are your users internally. And it's going to depend on your company. There are some companies like Datadog, which is built by engineers for engineers, a very technical product. It can be different if you have an e-commerce company where the different departments are not necessarily as technical. If you want to scale it, it's a combination of data, tools, and knowledge. You just have to admit also that self-serve analytics is not enough sometimes. So you need to understand what are the use cases that are too advanced for self-serve analytics, for which you need to mitigate. You need to hire people, or you need to try to solve them with your expertise. And finally, try to measure the efficiency of self-serve analytics, but read also the signals that are sometimes not measurable. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much for an amazing speech, and we have some questions. Oh, we have a lot of questions. Get ready. Get ready. I will read them out for you. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Excellent. All right. Let's start. Can you avoid having different definitions for the same metric when people are creating reports on a self-serve manner?
Very interesting question. And there was an interesting talk today from Philip from Airbnb about that. So yeah, it can be hard. If everyone self-serve reports or even the queries, then that's where you end up having multiple definitions of the same thing. So a few things to mitigate that. Like Airbnb is doing, that's what we are doing also with DBT, is trying to create a common definitions of important terms. What is a customer? Is it a person using Datadog? Is it an enterprise, a company using Datadog? Is it just an account within the platform? So you need to define a sort of metric. What does churn mean? What does a churn customer mean? So you need to define them, and ideally to integrate that within your data models, just like Airbnb is doing, and that's what we're trying to do. I just want to say that sometimes it's fine to have different definitions for the same thing. Depending on the departments and what they're trying to achieve, maybe it's okay to have marketing having different definitions of a new trial or a new customer than a product manager.
All right, thank you. In a self-service org, how do you deal with specific use case data modeling? Are the ambassadors doing it? Is data team liable for the upstream changes?
Yep. So we have the core official data sets, and in DBT we also have a dedicated folders and a set of models that are meant to be used for these more specific use cases, so a specific project. And who is going to use that? You said it in your question, is the specialized data analysts who are part of other departments. It can be us sometimes when we partner with another team, or is the analytics ambassadors, especially the ones who know how to write SQL models.
Thank you. How do you address data governance in your ecosystem?
Same thing, a hard question to solve, especially when you grow very fast like Datadog. So how we address that is that from the very beginning, we partner with our legal and privacy team. We ask them to define exactly what are the different classification of data and how we should treat the different types of data. That means how we should treat it within our systems, how the data should be processed and stored, how it should be accessed or not by which people within the company. So we try to have a clear classification and how the data should be treated, and we prove that in our systems we have the right mechanisms, ideally automated, to follow these rules. And then you have, of course, the regulations like GDPR that also has to be taken into account.
All right. Could the questions keep coming?
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Sorry for that. Did you try to make self-service Power BI or Tableau platform?
Interesting. We have a few teams who really wanted to have Tableau within Datadog to do more advanced, customized dashboards. We don't support it, and my team does not support it, so we just give access to it. But I don't think it's possible to, I haven't tried Power BI, but I think it's as complex and as advanced as Tableau. To use Tableau, you need to be a data analyst or like be an expert. I don't think that's compatible with self-serve, at least with self-serve by a business user that's maybe not technical. But again, it's fine. Like what I keep telling my team is that my job is not to convince people to use our BI tool. My job is to make sure that people have access to data, can use data to be data-driven in their work, in their decisions, and that the whole thing is done in a compliant and safe way. So.
All right, let's do two more because then we're out of time, so you can catch Jam after this talk and ask all your remaining questions. So what's your view on natural language querying as a no-code management self-service reporting solution? What's needed for successful business implementation?
So like I mentioned, right now, as it is today, I don't trust a bot to translate natural language into an actual SQL query. It can work if you have a very basic data model, like just orders and stocks and customers. But for us, it's so much more complex. We have hundreds of different tables. If I ask a bot, like, give me the top customers for the infrastructure monitoring product, what's a customer? Is it, again, a human being? Is it a company? Is it an account? What does that mean to be a top customer? Is it by usage? Is it by revenue? Is it by number of users? So all these things, it's impossible for a bot to interpret. And the worst part is that if the bot comes out with an answer, that's OK for him or for the bot, but not OK for the user. So right now, as it is today, I don't really trust the bot to do that. Maybe there are some ways to have a bot that asks all these questions, but I have not seen any of these working in the world for now.
All right, and the very last one, and then I'll let you go. What methods do you employ to avoid silos with embedded analysts?
Again, meeting with them regularly, having strong conventions that we try to put ourselves as like a shepherd of this data analyst community. We help them to adopt our tooling, adopt the same conventions. And in terms of siloing, so they have to be siloed at one point. That's also a good thing that they are siloed in terms of the type of job they need to do, which priorities they should have, because it depends on each department. However, we don't want them to be siloed as human beings and feel lonely, and we don't want them to be siloed in terms of reinventing the wheel when there is something that already exists.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. You survived all of them.
Yeah.